Paul says in Romans 3:20, for by works of the law, no human being will be justified in his sight, since through the law comes knowledge of sin. Being Jewish will not save you. Attending church every Sunday morning will not save you. Reading the Bible every day will not save you. Not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm just telling you, it will not save you. Being a good person will not save you. Because before God, all are condemned. We are all condemned people. Thought you were going to come and be lifted up. Not today. Seems like. But I think about that's something we need to dwell on. That's something we need to think about. We all think of ourselves as good people, right? I'm a good person. I don't murder. I love my neighbors. I don't steal. That's not what it's about. It's not about that. Being good will not save you. But see, the thing is if we can't, and this is the way our human mind works, if I can't find salvation by obedience, if we can't have salvation by the good things that we do, then how are we going to escape the wrath and judgment of God? Isn't that how we think today? You know, as long as I keep the law, as long as or at least don't get caught, as long as I keep the law, if I don't speed, the police aren't going to pull me over. So I'm a good citizen because I don't do those things. But that's not what it's about. Only grace can save us. The gospel of justification, we're going to talk about that word in a moment, by faith alone, through Jesus Christ alone. Nobody else, nothing else can save us except for belief in Christ. The answer is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And this is why in verse 16, what Paul says, this key thing he's telling them, he says, yet we know that a person is not justified by works of the law, but through faith in Jesus Christ. So we, meaning the Jews, also have believed in Christ Jesus in order to be justified by faith in Christ, not by works of the law. Because by works of the law, no one will be justified. If we look at those verses, and we look at verse 16, we see that Paul uses the term justification 3 times. So we know this word is key. And he's consistent in his admission of salvation only through faith. So let's understand what justification is. Probably the most simplest way to think about this is when you are justified, you are declared righteous. It's actually a legal term. It'd be like, in the Old Testament, in the law, it'd be like going to court, and what happens is the Lord condemns the person who's wrong, and he justifies the person who's right. But the thing about justification is justification does not change us inside. We need to understand that. That's a completely different term. That's sanctification. Justification just makes us right before God. Sanctification is what God does in us after that. So just because you have been justified does not mean that you are sanctified. It's a process. But what justification is God making the declaration about us. It's an act of God where he states that we as sinners are righteous because of our faith in Jesus Christ. It doesn't make us holy. It only declares us not guilty before God. That's why it's a legal term. And the great thing about justification is it's free. All we have to do is believe, and we get salvation and justification. But what if we live a perfect life? What if my life and your life is in perfect symmetry to the law? What if we keep all the commandments? What if, and including that, we keep all of man's laws? I don't go any faster than 55 miles an hour out here on Highway 1. That's the law. And we're supposed to obey the law. So what happens when I go 56 miles an hour or 55 and a half miles an hour? I've broken the law. But what if I don't? What if we keep everything in perfect symmetry? I mean, look at Matthew 19:17. What did Jesus say? Jesus said to him, "Why do you ask me about what is good? There is only one who is good, which is God." And he says, if you would enter life, keep the commandments. Isn't Jesus telling me that if I just keep all the laws, I'll enter life? See, this is the problem we have today when we take one verse and we base all of our theology on one verse. Yes, that is what Jesus is saying, but he said a whole lot more about salvation and about justification than just that one verse. But what if I do? What if we keep the law perfectly? The problem is we can't. We can't keep the law. And there's also another problem is the fact that, it's not the law that makes us good. Why was the law given? The law was given because if it wasn't for the law, we would not know what sin is. That's what it says. It was to show us how bad we really are. And we cannot keep it perfectly. And this is what James says about not keeping the law perfectly in James 2. He says, "For whoever keeps the law but fails in one point has been guilty of all of it. For he who said, 'Do not commit adultery,' also said, 'Do not murder.' If you do not commit adultery but do murder, you have become a transgressor of the law." And we say, well, I haven't committed adultery or murder, so I haven't broken the law. You have broken the law. Because if we look past our actions, and if we look into our hearts, if we read our minds and we examine our motives, what we're going to find is that multiple times we break God's law. We have a thought that we shouldn't have about somebody. We have a thought about ourselves, which is not what we think more highly of ourselves than we should. We break God's law. Humans are stubborn and will never humbly come to God on their own. This is why it says God calls us. He calls us. We wouldn't come to him if he wasn't calling us.